Hi, I'm retired New York City Police Detective Vic Ferrari, and welcome to NYPD Through the Looking Glass podcast, where you'll get unique insight into the New York City Police Department. Before we get started, I encourage you to check out my Amazon author page, where you'll find my series of behind-the-scenes NYPD books for $10 paperback, $2.99 ebook download, including my latest NYPD Laughing in the Line of Duty, which is loaded with funny and interesting stories. So, since this podcast has started gaining traction, and I encourage people to reach out to me, they have, but sometimes it's not exactly who you want to hear from or what you want to hear. So the other day, a woman reached out to me from YouTube to lecture me about last week's story about the precinct cop that mistakenly shot the harbor dog. Lady, I didn't do it. I was just telling a story from 30 years ago. I know, it's not fun to shoot a dog or anything like that. I get it, but it's just a story from 30 years ago. Lighten up. Another person, a guy, it's probably a guy, reached out to me and referred to me as Phil Leotardo. Now, that one made me laugh because Phil Leotardo was Tony Soprano's arch nemesis in the television series The Sopranos. He was played by the late Frank Vincent, and I'm guessing it's because of my hair. Listen, smartass, my hair wasn't always this color. It used to be jet black. I had hair like a tire. And it's funny. Life has a way of kicking us all in the ass. I remember one day being in a car with my friends on Tremont Avenue, and we stopped at a light, and there was a guy probably in his early 40s, and he was crossing the street. He had jet black hair, but he was starting to go gray, and he had like that skunk thing going, and we were howling. We couldn't stop laughing. Well, here we are 30, 40-something years later, and look, and there's nothing I can do about it. Now, the funny thing about Frank Vincent, who played Billy Batts in Goodfellas, and he was Joe Pesci's number 2 in Casino, always played in mob movies, really good actor. He was a musician, and my old sergeant was dating a girl in New Jersey, and he went to pick her up, and her father was a musician who was friends with Frank Vincent, and he got to meet him, and he said he was a really nice guy. And I'm guessing that Pesci, who was in Raging Bull with De Niro, somehow worked out something where they got Frank Vincent into the movie. And the funny thing is, Frank Vincent always gets the crap kicked out of him or killed by Joe Pesci in all his movies, right? So in Raging Bull, Joe Pesci beats the hell out of him in front of the Copa. And then in Goodfellas, he winds up in the trunk of the car. So rest in peace, the late, great Frank Vincent. Hopefully, on Saturday, if all goes well, I'll have a bonus episode, and it's going to be a little different. It's not going to be NYPD stories, but I hooked up with this gentleman. He's a former cameraman, and he's been involved in such movies as, let's see, Mean Streets, Taxi Driver, The Terminator, and Jaws. His name is Alec Hirschfeld, and he's got a book, and it's called What the Camera Didn't See: A Cameraman's Journey from Denmark, Spain, Hollywood, the Caribbean, and Back. I encourage you to check it out on Amazon. I haven't purchased the book yet, but here's the cover. I think, what does he want for it? I think it's $20. And I called him up and I reached out to him and we just started, shooting the shit. And really interesting guy. And he's got some really interesting stories about working for Martin Scorsese and Robert De Niro. And I can't get enough of that. So hopefully, if I'm supposed to record with him on Saturday. He's an older gentleman, so if all goes well, I should have another episode out this weekend, so don't kill me if I'm not able to pull it off. Things happen. So let's go to the news. So not in New York City, but it was in the New York Post, and I'm kind of fascinated with this story. Kansas City Chiefs fan who hosted watch party where 3 of his friends froze to death checks into rehab. You think? So there's this guy in Kansas City. He's a scientist. I think they said he's an AIDS scientist. He works on pharmaceuticals or something to do with AIDS, and he throws this Super Bowl party, and according to him, his friends came over, they left, or he fell asleep on the couch, and he slept for 2 days. But that story has changed, and people are calling him, hey, what happened to my brother, what happened to my friend, and friends and family start looking for their friends who left his house and hadn't been seen again. Well, the 3 of his friends that he said that were at the party with him and left, or, he fell asleep on the couch, they were all found dead in his backyard, just frozen. So they're doing toxology reports and autopsies and everything. And I think originally he was cooperative. Now, since he's hired an attorney, and he has checked himself into rehab. I'm sure the cops are rubbing their hands with that one. Probably, well, if you're going into rehab, they're not going to be able to question you. So I don't know if that plays into it or not. I don't know if the guy's got a drug problem or not, but, you know, that's kind of odd that 3 of your friends come over for a watch party and they wind up dead in your backyard. Next story is out of New Jersey. A Jersey teacher who had a sexual relationship with a 17-year-old female student evaded prison last week after her former student sent a letter in support of her at sentencing. And she was an art graphics teacher. The teacher's name is Christine Knudsen. Shout out to the Big Lebowski fans. And she was placed on lifetime parole supervision and forced to register as a sex offender, but she won't see a day behind bars if she doesn't violate the terms of her sentencing. Well, that's nice. That sounds kind of like a Mary Kay Letourneau story. We're at the beginning of one. I took art in middle school, and there was no way that was going to happen. So I just kind of thought that was an interesting story out of New Jersey. This one, New York City Police Department forced to report nearly every public interaction as City Council overwhelmingly rejects Mayor Adams' veto of cop stopping bill. All right, so I'm going to keep you up to speed with this. The NYPD used to have a thing called Stop, Question, and Frisk. And it wasn't controversial for years until they made it controversial. And Stop, Question, and Frisk means the police can stop an individual, question them, and if it raises to that level, they can frisk them. It's not a search, okay? And there's different types. There's the common law of inquiry, which means you can just walk up to someone. They're free to go. You can just walk up to them. Hey, you got a second? Hey, can I talk to you? Then there's mere suspicion. So you're driving by a gas station in the middle of the night, and there's two guys inside the gas station and behind the counter. The attendant looks concerned. So you pull over and you go in and you start talking to them. Then you have reasonable suspicion. That means a robbery occurred. You fit the description. The cops are going to stop you. They're going to want to talk to you. Now, that would lead to a frisk. And a frisk, or we used to call it a toss, is a slide and a squeeze. You're not allowed to go into someone's pockets. And it's just a way of the cop protecting themselves. You're stopping somebody that is possibly involved in a crime. You don't want to get shot while you're talking to this guy or stabbed. So you're going to do a slide and a squeeze, and you're going to pat them down for a weapon. Well, for whatever reason, it's become controversial. And the city council has basically has this thing in place now that anytime a cop talks to somebody or stops someone, any interaction, they have to fill out paperwork. Now, we had that. It's called a UF 250. It was a form that if you did a stop, question, and frisk, if it led to the frisk, you would fill out a UF 250, and it would just spell out the person's name, where they live, the time of day, it was their furtive movement, and basically what was the crime suspected that led you to pat this person down for your own protection. Well, whatever happened now, it's become controversial. And New York further slides into abyss because this is not going to end well. This one I found fascinating. New York City man caught with bombs, human sacrifices, hit list targeting cops was elementary school security guard. Unbelievable. A Queens man charged with keeping a human sacrifices hit list that included cops, judges, as he stockpiled homemade bombs and ghost guns was a security guard at a suburban elementary school on Long Island. I'm going to screw up this name, so bear with me. Angelo Hasagalius, who was busted with his wannabe anarchist brother at their home at their mother's home in Astoria, was a guard at John F. Kennedy Elementary School in Great Neck, home to Andy Kaufman, until school officials got wind of his arrest by cops and federal agents. Yeah, I mean, you don't want this guy around your kids, so I don't know what's going to happen to this case, and hopefully the paper got the article right. But that's a lot of charges, and that's bizarre. And you don't want somebody like that around your kid. This story really pissed me off. I don't know if you guys saw it. Cops allegedly beaten by rowdy migrant crowd near Times Square. Suspects freed without bail in horrifying video. I watched the video. You got a bunch of cops and a supervisor. I think he was a lieutenant. They're moving people around because Times Square, it gets a little crowded down there, and you got a lot of people that are up to no good. They're basically just shooing these guys away, and they turned on them. And they attacked these cops, and it turned into a wild brawl. And they got away, but then they had their photos all over the place, and I'm sure there was an effort to round them up. They did. None of these people, they don't even have footprints in the community. They're all illegal aliens. And they were freed without bail. And one of the guys gives the cameraman the finger as he's coming out of the Manhattan courthouse. So there's no surprise here what's going to happen. And it's a shame because when I was active, the Manhattan District Attorney's Office was a cut above. And I've made arrests in almost every borough in the city with the exception of Staten Island. But Manhattan was always a cut above. They were very cop-friendly. They went out of their way for you. And it's just a shame to see something like that happen. So today I'm going to tell a couple of funny DWI or DUI stories from my NYPD career. So how did I get to the DUI unit? Rookie cop, I do my field training. I wind up in the 4-2 precinct. The place is just a burnt-out ghetto. There's really not much going on. It was a dumping ground. So either you were a rookie cop and you didn't know anybody, or you had screwed up somewhere and you wound up there. And it was just a depressing place to work, and it was in the throes of the crack epidemic. I just wanted a change. So Bronx Task Force was this unit that covered the covered the borough of the Bronx. So they were picking up young people. They wanted new, it was very difficult to move around in the NYPD back then. No commanding officer wants to lose personnel. And if you're a rookie cop, they're like, sit down, rookie, you're not going anywhere. And I get that because you got to learn the ropes. But after 6 months, I had heard stories that the Bronx Task Force was picking up cops and anybody could put in for it. So I raised my hand, I filled out an application, and I went quick because in the NYPD, transfers do not happen fast unless you have a hook or a crane. I think like literally within a month and a half, I was gone. And what they do is when you put in a request to go somewhere, they call it a round robin. A round robin is like a background check within the NYPD to make sure you don't have department charges pending over your head, or you're under investigation, or you're not a screw up and you're someone's problem and then you're going to become someone else's problem. So there's a whole protocol and process before you get transferred. So I wind up in this unit. I'll never forget. It was me and another couple of guys. Our first day of orientation, the guy running the unit was a lieutenant. He calls us into his office and he goes, welcome to Bronx Task Force and everything and blah, blah, blah. Welcome to the Bronx Task Force DUI unit. And we're all looking at each other and he's like, yeah, you guys now are going to be in DUI. You're going to be working from 6 at night till 2 in the morning. You'll have a piece of the weekend off. And I'm going to put you with the old timers and they're going to show you the ropes and good luck. And I'll never forget, like, we walked out of his office and I'm scratching my head. I go, DUI? Like, I had never made a drunk driving arrest. I knew they were a pain in the ass. I knew there was a lot of paperwork involved. But I knew nothing about DUI arrest. And that's not what I signed up for. But in the NYPD, back then at least, you do what you're told. And the reason they were picking up all these young people was that unit had a lot of old timers in there before I got there. And they were padding their pension, making a lot of overtime. So what they did was they sent in this lieutenant to kind of throw a monkey wrench into that. And he was basically breaking up partners and basically they were trying to whip that unit into shape. So they were forcing the old timers out. And then as the old timers were leaving, they were either retiring or transferring out. Some got hit with department charges. They were restocking it with new guys. Well, the old timers hated us because they looked at us, rightfully so, as a threat. We're coming in and we're going to take their jobs. So they were not happy to have us there. They were bitter. And I wound up working with another young guy, but still we had to work with these old timers and it was not fun. And as I've stated earlier on this podcast, there's no winning with drunk drivers. They want to fight. They get sick. Sometimes they'll run on you. They'll piss in the backseat of the car. No one wants to lose their driver's license, so they're always challenging these cases, and you're always spending a lot of time in court. So I hated DUI. So anyway, we used to go down, as I spoke last week, up to the Hunts Point section of the Bronx. It was pimps and hoes after a certain hour. That brought all the horny guys, and they're driving around drunk. And we used to make DUI arrests down there. So one night, I was actually working with one of the old timers, and there's this guy with a custom van, and he's like driving on the sidewalk, and we pull him over. He's got a prostitute in the car, and the old timer makes him blow into an Alka-Seltzer, and he blows .15 or something. So And the guy was a big guy. I'll never forget this. So we lock him up and we put him in the radio car. Now, the Hunts Point section of the Bronx, you do not want to leave your car there, because once you leave, all the street urchins realize that you just got arrested and your car is going to be sitting there for a couple of days while you're going through the system. They're going to pick your car apart. It's almost like dumping a cone of ice cream cone near ants. They will pick that thing clean. Not only that, the Hunts Point section was all body shops and glass places. So all the junkies would just take your car apart and put your motor and everything in shopping carts and then just take it out of there. So we're locking this guy up. And in the NYPD, if you lock someone up in a vehicle, you're responsible for their vehicle. So the old timer says, Vic, just jump in his car and drive it over to the 4-1. I said, all right. I get in the car and it won't start. I'm trying. And the old timer's barking at me, come on, let's go. And I'm like, it's not going to start. So the perp, the drunk guy goes, I've got a hidden kill switch in there. So I get out of the car and I walk up to the back seat of the car and I look in the window and go, well, where's the kill switch? He goes, F you. I says, don't be like that. Just tell me where the cutoff switch is. You don't want to leave your van. He goes, no, you're responsible for my car. I go, no, we're not. Not if you're not going to let us drive it. And he would not give up the hidden kill switch was. We said, okay, fine, suit yourself. And I'll never forget this. This was like on a Wednesday. It was a Wednesday night. So we lock him up. He fails the test. He goes into the system. And back then, I don't know how it is now, but back then, if you got arrested, you could sometimes be in the Bronx courthouse for days until you saw a judge. It was just that crowded. Things weren't computerized like they are today. Now it's probably like a rocket docket. Things move along very quickly. But back then, things went very slow. So Thursday comes and goes. Friday night, I'm working with that same old timer, and we go back down to Hunts Point. We're driving around, and the old timer goes, let's see what happened to that asshole's car. He goes, I'm curious about that. I says, all right. And I think it was on Hunts Point Avenue. We drive down Hunts Point Avenue, and you see the van, and it's on blocks. All the glass, like it was like one of those custom vans, like there was like side windows and stuff. All the glass was gone. The seats were gone. The windshield were gone. It was a shell. Like within 2 days, they had picked this thing clean. So we're just sitting there laughing, and he's having his coffee. I think I was in my 20s. I'm drinking a soda. And we're just kind of laughing at the irony of this. A car pulls up, and it's the guy. And his friends are dropping him off to pick up what's left of his van. And the guy gets out, and he's standing there, and he just starts screaming, I can't freaking believe this. And he's jumping up and down. And then he looks and he sees us and he goes, you too, motherfucker. And he just starts yelling and screaming, and we drove off. And I always ask that old timer, I go, did he ever, did you get sued, or did he take the case to court? He goes, I never heard another thing about it. So sometimes you think you're going to get sued or something and nothing happened. And there's other times where everything goes well and then somebody tries to sue you. And just he's got an attitude as he's giving me his license or registration. He goes, I know why you pulled me over. I says, why did I pull you over? He says, you see a BMW in an impoverished neighborhood, and you think that gives you the right to shake the trees. I go, and as I'm trying to explain to him that he's got a taillight out, I need your name, I'm making a civilian complaint. He was an attorney. And he's like, I'm going to make a civilian complaint. You just can't pull people over. I know the law. And I wasn't even going to give this guy a ticket. I wasn't even going to bust his balls at all. I was just going to tell him he had a taillight out. He's going on and on and on. I said, okay, give me your license and registration. Sitting next to him in the front seat is a prostitute. I said, okay. So my partner and I go back to the car, and now I'm writing him the taillight summons. And my partner's like, we've got him by the balls. Like, does he not know? I says, you know what? I don't care. So I write him the summons. We go back to the car, and he's just going on and on and on. And he goes, you will, you're going to hear about this at the Civilian Complaint Review Board. He goes, this is, what did he say? This is an abuse of police power or something. I go, no, I'm going to show you what is abuse of police power. Please step out of the car. Made him and the prostitute step out of the car. So I says, let me explain to you what's going to happen. And as I'm talking to him, my partner is writing down all the prostitute's vital information, name, date of birth, pimp, corner, etc. I said, here's a ticket. I says, if I get a civilian complaint or any shit from this stop tonight, I said, I am going to call your house. He lived up in Westchester County. I says, I'm going to call your house, and I'm going to tell your wife what happened tonight and who you were with. And he goes, well she's a client. I says, that's fine. I says, don't worry about it. So my partner then goes, and he goes, yeah, I got all her information. I go, if you're not listed in the phone book, I says, I'm going to have to, I will find her and drive her up to your house, and we'll tell your wife what you were doing in the point. He got on his knees. Sorry, I didn't mean it. I got a very stressful job. I says, well, we all have stressful jobs. I said, you don't have to be an asshole. So I told him, I go, look, I'm not looking to ruin your life. I says, go to a local, I says, get the taillight fixed within, I think it's 48 hours. I says, go to any local precinct. I says, and they'll, won't go on, you won't get the points or anything. I says, but don't try to break my balls for doing my job. No, I'm sorry. I know you're just doing your job. Yeah, he knew I was doing my job after we caught his hand in the cookie jar. Another funny DUI story is, we're in Hunts Point. We're on Pelham Parkway in the Bronx, and that's a long 3-lane in each direction straightaway. People go at a high rate of speed down Pelham Parkway. They shouldn't, because it's all tree line, and sometimes people lose control of their cars, and that's the end of them. But we see this green beat-up station wagon burn a light. So we pull the car over, and as we approach, it's a Hasidic Jewish couple, and the wife is driving. And I said, hi, how you doing? I said, do you know why I stopped you? And the husband kind of leans across the wife who's driving, and he says, officer, my wife is pregnant. I'm rushing her to the hospital. So I says, well, why aren't you driving? And the wife just kind of put her head down. I said, I'll tell you what, give me a license and registration. So she gives me a license and registration. I go, follow me. We get back. He's like, no. I go, just follow me. I put the lights and sirens on, and we go down Pelham Parkway to Jacoby Hospital. It's a big hospital. Anybody that usually gets shot in the Bronx, it's great for trauma. I drive into the emergency room. I'm yelling and screaming, pregnant woman here, pregnant woman here. The security guard comes out with a wheelchair. They put the woman in. The husband's trying to stop me. I'm like, no. You said she's pregnant. You said she's in labor. They take her in the back. I hand the paperwork to the woman behind the counter. She starts entering the data, the driver's license and everything. So I hope that emergency room visit was better for him than getting the ticket. He said she was in labor. Like they tell us in the NYPD, you're not a doctor. Call a doctor, call EMS. And that's exactly what I did. Another time, this is an unbelievable story. I'm working over by Westchester Square in the 4345 border. And I forget what she did wrong, but we pulled this woman over by the bus stop. Late 30s, very thin. And as I walk up to her, I can just smell the alcohol inside the car. It was like just coming out of her pores. And just overwhelming, the alcohol. So we put her on the Alka-Sensor. She just blows like a ridiculous number into the 30s, like 0.3 something. And we're looking, we did it like 3 times, like we just couldn't believe that she was still talking and she was 0.3 something. So we brought her over to Highway 1, which is where they put you on the breathalyzer, which is a more accurate reading. I thought the Alka-Sensor was screwed up. I'm like, there is no way this woman is blowing 0.3 high something. They put her on the breathalyzer, and I'll never forget this, 0.38. Now, for most people, you start getting in that range, that's alcohol poisoning. Like your whole system can shut down. Do you know she passed the coordination test? I had never seen, now she was drunk. Make no mistake about it. Like she was slurring her speech, but not as drunk as you would think. And she did the walk and turn. Then she was goofing around on camera. She's like, watch this. She had her arms out, up on one leg, passed the coordination test. We lodge her because Bronx Central booking was full. So we lodge her in a precinct, and then we found out later on she had a seizure. So she really was that drunk. The thing is, I never enjoyed making DUI arrests. Back then, it was just so busy in New York City, especially in the Bronx. We just didn't have time for DUIs. So oftentimes we would take people's keys or call them a cab or have them call a friend to pick them up. But we really, unless you got stuck in a DUI unit like I did, we really didn't mess around with them that much. So after I retire from the NYPD, I become a cop in Florida. And then there's such an emphasis on law enforcement down here in the Sunshine State for DUIs. And I get it. Driving drunk is dangerous. I get it. People have lost their lives, but the amount of training involved in it, and it's just constant. So I'm new to this police department down here in Florida, and I'm working at midnight, and I was just out of field training, so I'm by myself, and I'm trying to learn the lay of the land down here. And we had this old-time sergeant, very grumpy guy, and he calls me on the radio and he tells me to go to the other end of the city, and it's on a midnight. So I'm like, what does he have, right? So I drive all the way down to the other end. You're by yourself. So I drive down there. He's got a car stop, and he's got this female, and she's crying her eyes out. So I walk over, and he comes over to me. I go, what's up, boss? He goes, she's drunk. I want to test her. He goes, just watch her. I said, all right, boss. So I go over, and she's just crying. And I forget, she was either like she was a manager at like a restaurant chain, and I don't know what chain, but like a Buffalo Wild Wings or TJ, one of those things. And she's crying her eyes out, and she's really upset. And I said, listen to me. I says, you have to stop crying. I says, because if you don't, it's not working, number one. And number two, if you piss off this old timer, he's going to make me take you to jail. I says, so you got one shot at this. I go, either agree to take the coordination test, I says, or refuse and get locked up. I go, these are your options. I says, but the crying is just going to make it worse for you. So she pulls herself together, and he comes out with the pen, and he's back and forth in her eyes, checking to see her pupils. Then he makes her do he asks her if she wants to do the coordination test, and she does, and she fails. Not terribly, but she fails, right? So he tells her, you sit here. He goes, come here, Vic. So I walk over to him. And I says, what's up, boss? And I knew already what he wanted me to say. And he goes, what do you think we should do about this? And he figured, like, I'm this hot shot from NYPD, which I'm not, that's going to tell him, oh, this is bullshit. What are you sticking me with this for? So he could say, take her to jail. I said, boss, she's drunk. I said, and if you want to apply the letter of the law, I'll lock her up. I says, but if you're asking, there's a lot of people floating around here on the midnight. I go, we had a couple of conditions of like burglaries and auto break-ins. I said, I think we'd be best served doing that. I said, she lives around the corner, she said. I said, if you want me to take her to jail, I'll take her to jail. So he just kind of looked at me. I kind of took the fun out of it for him, and he goes, tell her she's got one phone call and somebody better be down here in like 10 minutes. I said, okay, boss. I walk up to her, and I said, listen to me. I said, get on that phone. Call your husband, your boyfriend, your priest, your rabbi. Call anybody. I says, get somebody down here now to give you a ride home. She goes, I live literally around the block. I says, we're not following you. I says, get on that phone. So she goes, all right. So she makes a call. She gets off the phone. I kid you not, we're standing out there in this neighborhood. The boyfriend, instead of going around the block, cut through a yard. It was like Field of Dreams. He scared the shit out of me. He came out through a hedge, and let's just say her name was Karen. He goes, Karen, is everything all right? So she can't thank me enough. She's crying, and she goes, here. And she starts handing me like restaurant. I'm like, are you out of your mind? I go, you want this guy for me to lock you up for bribery? I said, just go. Get the hell out of here. So wherever you are, I remember that story. So let's see what else. Oh, there was a couple of times I locked people up for DUIs that were carrying handguns. Now in New York, unless you're a cop and you get a permit, which is next to impossible to get a carry permit in New York City, carrying any type of firearm is illegal. And there were a couple of times I locked up some really badasses for DUI that had like a stolen gun on them or a defaced gun with a serial number was filed off. And I remember the district attorneys thinking that was the funniest thing in the world. They're looking at the charges, and I'm writing it up, and they're going, wait, so like he was DUI with a gun? I said, yeah, they couldn't get enough of that. They thought that was the funniest thing in the world. What else I got? Oh, so one time, we're driving around the South Bronx, and there was this illegal social club on Southern Boulevard. And this is before the Happy Land Social Club tragedy where 90-something people, perished in a fire. But it's before they really started cracking down on the social clubs. And they didn't want, like, precinct cops just going in there and raiding the place. But there was this social club, and it's pumping out music. And we drive by, and there's a guy pissing on a mailbox like down the block from the social club with a set of keys in his hand, right? And he waves. He waves to us. So I pull up, and he goes, have you seen my car? And he's describing his car. I go, listen to me. Do not, I says, just jump in a gypsy cab. I says, don't get, whatever you do not drive. Okay, you got it. You're right. He puts the keys in his pocket, blah, 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 blah. And let's just say, for argument's sake, have you seen a red Cadillac? I don't remember what it was. My memory isn't what it used to, and this is 35 years ago. About 10 minutes later, my partner and I are like 3 blocks away, and a red Cadillac blows a stop sign. I go, you don't think? He goes, I'll bet you it is. We pull him over. The guy didn't even remember us. We locked him up, took his car, and took him to jail. So I hope you enjoy my DUI stories, but I got a couple of other things. As always, I want to thank everyone for tuning in, especially my friends in Toledo, Ohio. Now, I don't know why I'm such a hit in Toledo, Ohio, but I've got over 400 downloads in Toledo, so I'm seriously starting to consider starting a cult down there. Thank you, Toledo, Ohio. I really appreciate your support. Kissimmee, Florida, home to the Viking Motel, Xanadu, home of the future, and the other forgotten tourist traps along I-192, a.k.a. Earl Bronson Boulevard. When I was a kid, we didn't have a lot of money, so what my mom would do is she would save up money every year, and we would drive to Florida. And we didn't have money to stay at the Disney resort, so we would stay at the mom-and-pop motels. And Orlando at the time, or Kissimmee, which is right next to Orlando, along this I-192, had all these tourist traps and little motels, and it was neat. If you drive down there now, it's corporate America is basically taken over. But those things that I brought up earlier, the Xanadu and the Viking Motel and that Big Orange, which is a tourist T-shirt and all that other crap, is still there. Okay, where else? Marcy, New York, home to Mid-State Correctional Facility, and all the COs are correction officers. Thank you for tuning in. And last but certainly not least, my friends in Bright House, Calderdale in England, thank you for tuning in. I see a lot of activity from there. If you work in law enforcement or have an interesting criminal background and would like to be a guest on the show, please drop me a note on Twitter or Instagram at VicFerrari50. If you enjoy the content, please check out my Amazon author page where you'll find my series of behind-the-scenes books. Type in my name, Vic, Ferrari like the car. Again, they're $10 paperback, $2.99 ebook download. I'm not going to name them because I don't want to get on your nerves. They're right behind me, and as you can see, I've got the high-tech light mounted on a tripod. I'm going to try to get this place to look more professional. But again, thank you for tuning in, and hopefully I'll have that episode with that guy, the camera guy, and have a great week.